Why do we crave the ones who hurt us? Why do we call love what quietly steals our peace? And why, even knowing the rules, do we keep playing this game where the heart almost always loses? Love isn't the poetry we grew up believing in. It's a subtle form of power. It's not the kind that screams, the kind that whispers. It's the kind that smiles while rearranging your soul without permission. Beneath the flowers, beneath the gentle words, there's a machinery most people never dare to look at. A machinery made of silence, distance, and control. Romance, at its core, can be a battlefield disguised as intimacy. A quiet game where the winner is the one who loves the least, the one who hides best, the one who knows that silence can cut deeper than any insult, and a half smile can be a trap more seductive than any confession. You felt it, haven't you? That strange reversal where the person who fascinates you the most is the one who keeps you uncertain, feeding you crumbs of attention enough to keep your soul hungry. They offer presence as a luxury, not a gift. And without noticing, you begin to beg for what once was freely given. What we call love might just be a negotiation of power. We don't only want to be loved, we want to dominate. We want to be remembered, desired, feared. We want to own a piece of someone's mind. Close your eyes for a second. Think of the person who once made your world spin. Now ask yourself, was that love, or was it a war disguised as affection? There's a moment almost too subtle to notice, when tenderness becomes calculation. A look that lingers 1 second longer than it should. A silence perfectly measured. And just like that, what seemed romantic turned strategic. No one steps into intimacy unarmed. Whether we admit it or not, we all carry invisible weapons. Detachment, emotional withdrawal, timing. Because in the game of connection, whoever controls the rhythm controls the bond. We've all done it. Ignored a message to seem less available, held back affection to seem stronger, stayed silent not because we had nothing to say, but because we wanted to be missed. There's a certain pleasure in being needed, in being the absence someone else aches to fill. This dance between care and control is as old as humanity itself. Not that we can't love. It's that love, real love, always carries a shadow, the desire to possess what moves us. The harsh truth is this: nobody loves out of pure selflessness. We love because we want to matter. We want to leave a mark on someone else's memory, a scar, a ghost, an echo. We want to be the one they can't forget, even when they try. Love, in its rawest form, is not a meeting of souls. It's a war of perceptions. Whoever shapes the narrative wins. The one who knows how to switch masks, victim, savior, mystery, controls not only the story, but the pulse of desire itself. How many times have you desired the one who denied you? How many times have you mistaken indifference for depth, silence for maturity, distance for worth? We don't fall for clarity, we fall for uncertainty. The heart bows before the enigma. That's why in the dark psychology of desire, the one who controls the silence often holds the power. Because love isn't fair, it's tactical. And in the field of attraction, the one who desires least dominates most. Think about the stories that marked you, the ones that made you lose sleep. They weren't peaceful. They were the ones that kept you chasing, doubting, overthinking. The ones where you were always one step behind. That's not coincidence, that's design. Because the human heart is vulnerable to scarcity. Give too much, and you lose the throne. Withdraw at the right moment, and you become a legend. That's the dirtiest secret of desire. Not because it's manipulative, but because it's true. Every affection, sooner or later, becomes a negotiation of power. And perhaps the most dangerous thing isn't loving someone, but loving the fact that they want you. Because then, what S at stake? ESNT, the person, it. S, your reflection in their eyes. The ego dances. Love only provides the music. There's a kind of influence that doesn't raise its voice. It whispers. It doesn't demand. It invites. It doesn't chase. It withdraws, knowing withdrawal breeds hunger. The most effective manipulation is the one that looks like fragility. Vulnerability, sometimes genuine, sometimes perfectly rehearsed, becomes the ultimate disguise of power. Have you ever met someone who seemed so broken, so fragile, that you felt compelled to protect them? And before you realized it, your emotions started revolving around theirs. Your peace became tied to their storms. That's not affection. That's control wrapped in empathy. Because sometimes, the one who appears weak is the one who rules. Not by force, but through the illusion of need. Power, after all, doesn't always wear armor. Sometimes it cries. Imagine this. You meet someone who seems open, soft, even a little wounded. They talk about their past like it still hurts, and something in you stirs, a kind of tenderness mixed with fascination. You want to protect them, to help them heal. But little by little, without noticing, your emotions begin orbiting theirs. You start worrying when they're distant, apologizing when you've done nothing wrong, making yourself smaller so they don't feel threatened. And one day you wake up realizing your entire peace depends on their moods. You didn't fall in love, you were recruited into emotional servitude. That's the dark side of human attachment. It doesn't always enslave through strength. It enslaves through fragility. Real power often hides behind what looks like helplessness. Because when someone presents themselves as weak, they invite you to lower your guard. They make you volunteer your loyalty, make you feel chosen, like your empathy gives your life purpose. But in that moment, something crucial shifts. You're no longer choosing love. Love is choosing for you. I've seen it in clients. A man sitting across from me, explaining how he's been trying to be patient with a woman who constantly disappears. She says she's processing things. She posts stories that make him jealous. She withholds affection, then sends a sudden late night, "I miss you," and every time he falls right back in. He says he understands, but he doesn't. He's being conditioned. Conditioned to chase relief. She gives him chaos, and then a moment of peace. That's the psychological loop no one talks about. Create uncertainty, offer comfort, repeat until dependency forms. It's not conscious cruelty. Sometimes it's instinct. People who've tasted chaos often recreate it, not to hurt others, but to feel alive. The irony? Both sides think they're the ones suffering. One believes they're constantly abandoned, the other believes they're constantly chasing. But neither realizes they're playing the same game from opposite ends, one through silence, the other through fear. Power doesn't always look like dominance. Sometimes it looks like the ability to make someone else question their worth. The most subtle form of control is not commanding someone, it's making them doubt their own perception. You don't tell them what to think. You make them unsure of what they feel. You've seen it. That person who vanishes right after an intimate night only to reappear with a casual "hey, been busy." The one who always leaves messages unseen, knowing exactly how long you'll stare at that blue tick. The one who gives affection only when they sense you pulling away, reeling you back in just enough to keep the illusion alive. This is not a game of romance, it's a quiet war of timing. And timing, in the psychology of power, is everything. Silence becomes the sharpest weapon. Absence becomes a stage. And the person who speaks less rules more. Because when someone stops responding, your mind doesn't rest. It works overtime. It builds stories, excuses, fantasies. The silence becomes fertile ground for obsession. And the cruelest part, they don't even have to lie. Your imagination does the work for them. I remember a woman once telling me, "He never promised me anything. But somehow, I felt like I owed him everything." That's the paradox of emotional control. It doesn't need promises. It just needs moments of high contrast. Chaos followed by calm, distance followed by warmth. This alternating rhythm, push and pull, releases the same chemicals as addiction. Dopamine spikes when something unpredictable happens. You start associating anxiety with excitement, instability with love, and once that connection forms, you're trapped. You don't crave peace anymore. You crave the storm, because only after the storm comes the relief, and that relief feels like heaven. But what you don't see is that the same person who gives you the relief is the one creating the storm. That's the secret structure of what I call emotional architecture. Build tension, then release it. Cause pain, then soothe it. The human brain confuses that with depth, because intensity feels like meaning. Think of it, the most unforgettable relationships are rarely calm. They're chaotic, unpredictable, electric. You feel alive in them not because they're right, but because they constantly pull you between fear and desire. The chaos, makes you feel. And to a heart starved for feeling, even pain becomes proof of connection. This is why so many people can't walk away from what's clearly destroying them. They call it passion, they call it destiny, but what they're really addicted to is the rhythm. Because chaos and calm together create the illusion of purpose. You think, if I can just get back to how it was, everything will make sense again. But it never goes back because how it was just the bait. True power in relationships isn't loud, it's measured. It's in the precision of when to leave, when to return, when to look, when to stay silent. Those who master it don't conquer through words, they conquer through anticipation. You start to wait for them, to crave their messages, to revolve your day around their next appearance. And that's when they've already won. Because the moment you start waiting, you've surrendered your balance. Love, at its darkest, is not a feeling. It's an economy of attention. And the currency isn't affection, it's uncertainty. There's something haunting about the way silence speaks. It doesn't yell, it doesn't accuse, it waits. It turns seconds into hours, hours into doubt, and doubt into hunger. You check your phone over and over, like a ritual. You replay the last conversation, wondering if you said too much. You scroll through their stories, trying to decode a meaning that was never there. That's not love. That's psychological conditioning. The truth is, the one who controls your waiting controls you. Because silence is not absence, it's influence. It's a way of saying, I decide when you feel seen. That's the cruel beauty of emotional power. It doesn't need confrontation to dominate, it just needs precision. A delay here, a cold reply there, a single goodnight after days of heat. And you crumble. So what you really crave is not their words, it's their attention. Their attention became your oxygen. Every relationship ruled by uncertainty has the same structure. One person speaks less. One person feels more. And the imbalance becomes the glue. The more silence you get, the more you reveal, hoping your openness will earn you closeness. But it never does. Because silence feeds submission. And submission feels a lot like devotion until you realize it's just dependence. That's the darkest secret. When someone teaches you to chase, you call it love. When someone trains you to wait, you call it loyalty. When someone manipulates your peace, you call it passion. But those are not the languages of love. They are the mechanics of control. Here's the paradox. The one who withdraws doesn't always mean harm. Sometimes they do it instinctively, a reflex of fear, of control, of self-preservation. But to the one left waiting, it feels like death in slow motion. Every unanswered message becomes a reminder that your worth depends on someone else's mood, and yet you stay. You stay because your mind confuses pain with importance. Because in a world numb with distraction, even hurt feels like meaning. It's easy to mistake emotional turbulence for depth. The highs and lows feel sacred, like proof of real connection, but they're not. They're just chemical storms, dopamine, cortisol, oxytocin, pulling you in circles, making the chaos addictive. You start to crave the instability. You tell yourself, if it hurts this much, it must be real. But no, real love doesn't keep you guessing. Real love doesn't make you compete for oxygen. The most toxic kind of bond is the one that gives you both heaven and hell and makes you believe that is balance. Now here's where the psychology gets darker. The human brain doesn't attach to people, it attaches to patterns. And the most addictive pattern of all is unpredictability. When affection becomes inconsistent, when love becomes a gamble, your mind releases dopamine not from receiving love, but from hoping for it. You're addicted not to the person, but to the possibility of being loved again. And that's why leaving feels impossible. You not trying to escape them, you trying to escape the unfinished story they created in your mind. I've seen men destroyed by that story. Men who once had control, direction, pride, reduced to whispers of themselves, walking contradictions of strength and fragility. They say, I just need closure. But closure never comes from the one who benefits from your confusion. The one who creates your chaos will never calm it, because your chaos is their power. The tragedy is that this dance feels sacred. You tell yourself it's fate. You romanticize your suffering. You say she just needs time. She's been hurt before. But behind every excuse, there's a truth you don't want to face, that you refeeding the very system that keeps you weak. We think we want connection, but often we want control over the connection. We want to be the one who is needed more, the one whose silence matters. Because deep down, every human being fears being forgettable. That's why people manipulate, not out of cruelty, but out of terror. The terror of being ordinary, terror of being ignored. And so, they create absence, because absence guarantees attention. The one who disappears becomes the one you can't stop thinking about. The one who says less becomes the one you try hardest to understand. The one who gives less becomes the one you value more. That's not love. That's economics. It's the law of emotional scarcity. Give little, receive much. Withdraw, and you'll be chased. Chase, and you'll be ignored. It's cruel, but it's true. Love obeys the laws of imbalance. The one who controls the distance controls the desire. And here's the twist. Sometimes that power isn't calculated, it's unconscious. Many people learn early that withdrawal keeps them safe. They retreat not to punish, but to protect themselves. But even unconscious power is still power, and it reshapes the emotional gravity of the relationship. Because in every love story where tension never fades, there's always one who speaks less. And that person, whether they know it or not, holds the crown. The more they retreat, the more you reveal. The more they go silent, the louder your longing grows. And in that imbalance, the entire dynamic crystallizes. Love becomes less about connection and more about survival. You start asking yourself, what did I do wrong? You start apologizing just to feel warmth again. You start offering more than you ever wanted to give. And all the while, they remain calm, distant, untouchable. They hold the silence like a blade. You hold your breath, waiting for mercy. That's how emotional power works. It doesn't force you to kneel. It teaches you to kneel willingly. Once that happens, you're not in love anymore. You're ruled. There's a moment quiet. It's almost invisible, when the game stops being about attraction and becomes something else entirely. It turns into governance. Not of nations or armies, but of emotions. A silent rule enforced not through words, but through uncertainty. Because in the hidden architecture of desire, power doesn't come from strength. It comes from the ability to create chaos, and then offer order. That's the core of every manipulative dynamic. Create the wound, then become the cure. It's not seduction, it's engineering. Emotional engineering. You've felt it, haven't you? That dizziness when someone pulls away without warning. The sleepless nights, the stomach tightening with every unread message. You start imagining things. Did they lose interest? Did you say something wrong? You go over each moment, searching for clues that were never there. That's chaos. Not loud chaos, internal chaos. The kind that doesn't scream, but corrodes. And then they return with a message, a call. A single "Hey, I was thinking about you." And in that instant, you breathe again. The storm inside you stops. You feel peace. But you dainty realize that peace was manufactured by the same person who built your storm. They give pain, then relief, tension, then affection. Absence, then presence. And soon, you start to crave that rhythm more than the person. Because the person isn't the drug. The cycle is. This is the psychological loop that enslaves millions of hearts. You think you're holding on to someone? But what you're really holding on to is the pattern that binds you to them. Because deep down, you're not addicted to love, and you're addicted to the interruption of pain. We call it chemistry, fate, connection. But it's simply a biological trap. Chaos followed by calm, stress followed by relief, and every cycle deepens the dependency. The cruel part is the one who controls the chaos appears magnetic. Their unpredictability feels divine, like destiny. You start mistaking emotional instability for emotional depth. You tell yourself, no one has ever made me feel this much. And that's true. But it's not love that made you feel that much. It's instability. The most memorable relationships are rarely the healthiest ones, or the ones that took you to extremes that pulled you apart, then stitched you back together just enough to keep you hoping. You confuse the suffering with passion, the anxiety with intensity. You start to believe that the person who can destroy your peace is also the one who gives your life meaning. That's the illusion of dark desire. It makes you mistake destruction for depth. And yet there's a reason we fall into it. because chaos makes us feel alive. When someone disorients you, you become present. Every nerve awakens. Every second matters. Attention becomes addictive, a temporary escape from the numbness of modern love. Maybe that's why the quiet ones, the calm ones, the truly stable partners often feel boring, because they don't create enough chaos to make you feel alive. But here's the paradox. The peace you reject is the peace you're dying for. Every person who's ever lost themselves in the game of love and power knows this. You don't chase the one who loves you, you chase the one who confuses you, because confusion keeps your ego starving. And a starving ego mistakes survival for love. That's the final trick. You think you're fighting for them? But really you're fighting for yourself, for the version of you that feels alive when they appear. They don't control you through domination, they control you through meaning. They make you believe that your world only spins when they're in it. And so, you forget that you had a world before they came. The real power, in love and in life, has never been about conquering others. It's about mastering your own reactions. When someone pulls away, when they go silent, when they make you wait, don't chase. Observe. Don't beg to be seen. See yourself. That's where the game breaks. That's where control returns. Because what keeps the manipulator powerful is not their mystery, it's your need for answers. Let them stay silent. Let them vanish. But you don't vanish from yourself. In the end, the most dangerous form of seduction isn't about lust or beauty. It's about control of perception. The one who makes you question your worth wins until you stop playing. Love, at its highest level, is not a war. It's a dance between two people who know how to hold their own ground. It's not about ruling or surrendering, it's about seeing and being seen without distortion. But that kind of love requires what most people fear the most: stability. And stability is only possible when you no longer need chaos to feel alive. So maybe the real challenge isn't finding the right person. Maybe it's becoming the kind of person who can love without needing control. Because the dark psychology of desire will always exist, whispering, seducing, manipulating through silence and illusion. But awareness is immunity. When you understand the structure of power in love, you stop being a pawn. You stop chasing, stop explaining, stop bleeding for crumbs of affection. You reclaim the one thing every manipulative dynamic steals first: your center. And when you finally have that, you stop begging to be chosen. You choose. Because love, when it's real, doesn't demand that you shrink to fit someone's shadow. It invites you to stand in your own light, even when it burns. And maybe that's the highest form of power there is, not the ability to make someone stay, but the strength to remain whole when they leave.